What's on death row's menu? The food that awaits San Quentin's inmates. The tray no one forgets. The metal door slides open with a hard, cold clang. A correctional officer steps inside the narrow walkway of San Quentin's death row, holding a single gray food tray. It's quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that only exists in a place where men wait for the state to decide their final day. He walks slowly, counting cells. Cell 1, cell 2, cell 3. Then he stops at a door with thick metal bars and whispers into the darkness. Dinner time. The inmate steps forward. His eyes look tired, hungry, and drained. The officer pushes the tray through a small rectangular slot, the food slot, and what's inside shocks most people when they first see it. A rubbery piece of meatloaf, a scoop of watery mashed potatoes, and a small carton of milk that expired yesterday. This is death row dinner. The last food of the day for the most isolated inmates in California. And this moment raises one powerful question. Is this really what men on death row eat? Before we answer that fully, the camera pulls back to reveal something even more surprising. Because this tray, this exact tray, is nothing compared to what San Quentin serves at breakfast, lunch, and sometimes, for a man's final meal. Cut to black. Title card. What's on death row's menu? The food that awaits San Quentin's inmates. The morning that never feels like morning. On San Quentin's death row, the day starts long before the sun. At 4:30 a.m., the lights snap on. Not slowly. Not gently. They blast the tier with a brightness that makes it feel like someone pointed a flashlight straight into every cell. Most inmates are already awake. The noise of metal doors, footsteps, coughs, and echoing whispers never fully stops in here. By 5 a.m., officers start delivering breakfast trays. And breakfast on death row is basic. Very basic. Typical tray will have a small scoop of oatmeal, one piece of fruit, usually an apple that's half bruised, a slice of bread, and sometimes powdered eggs that look nothing like eggs. The tray slides through the food slot. No words. No conversation. No eye contact. Just food passed through a hole in metal. The oatmeal is often cold by the time it reaches the last cell. The eggs? They smell like cardboard. The bread? Dry like it was baked 3 days ago. But on death row, nobody gets to choose. No fast food. No kitchen access. No microwaves. No snacks from a drawer. Every meal comes through that tiny rectangular opening. Some inmates say breakfast is the hardest meal to swallow, not because of the taste, but because every day starts the exact same way. No change. No variety. No freedom. It's the same breakfast whether you've been here for 6 months or 16 years. And as the inmates eat alone in silence, most think the same thing. If this is breakfast, what does lunch look like? But lunch is its own story, and it comes with a meal that almost every death row inmate complains about. The lunch everyone dreads. By late morning, the death row unit starts to wake up a little. Not with freedom, but with routine. Officers walk the tier checking each cell. Inmates pace back and forth in the small space between their bed and the bars. Some read. Some write. Some stare at the wall. But around 11 a.m., everything stops for one reason. Lunch is coming. And on San Quentin's death row, lunch has one nickname shared by almost everyone. The mystery meal. Here's what a typical lunch tray looks like. A scoop of meat that nobody can identify. A spoon of overcooked beans. A piece of cornbread so dry it crumbles like sand. And if it's a good day, a tiny packet of jelly. But the main part, the mystery meat. This is what inmates talk about the most. Some days it's shaped like a burger patty. Other days it's a long gray strip that looks like fish but tastes like rubber. Sometimes it's round like a meatball, but nobody knows what's inside. Rumors spread through the unit every week. Is it turkey? No, bro, that ain't turkey. Maybe soy. Nah, soy don't bounce like that. For inmates on death row, lunch is the meal with the most complaints, because it's the one where you truly can't tell what you're eating. And the scary part? Most of the time, the officers can't tell either. But there's one thing worse than the taste. Worse than the texture. Worse than the fact that it's barely warm. Lunch is the loudest reminder that you have no control. You don't choose it. You don't request it. You don't reject it. You eat it, or you stay hungry until dinner. Many inmates just pick at it, eating only the beans or the cornbread. Others force it down because they know dinner might be worse. But every once in a while, something strange happens. A tray shows up with something surprisingly decent, like real chicken or a piece of fruit that isn't bruised. When that happens, word travels down the row faster than anything. So, they gave real chicken today. For real? Yeah, like actual chicken. But those days are rare. Very rare. And sometimes, just when inmates think the worst food is behind them, dinner arrives. And dinner on death row has its own dark reputation. Dinner, the meal that reminds you where you are. As the sun starts to set behind the walls of San Quentin, everything inside death row slows down. The noise, the voices, even the air feels heavier. Around 4:30 p.m., officers begin the same routine they've done thousands of times, walking the tier with gray trays stacked on a small rolling cart. Dinner is here. And for many death row inmates, dinner is the moment that hits the hardest. Not because of the taste, not because of the size, but because of what it represents. This is the last thing you will eat today. If you don't like it, too bad. You wait until morning. The typical death row dinner looks like this. A soft, rubbery slice of meatloaf. A scoop of instant mashed potatoes that tastes more like warm water. A spoon of canned vegetables, usually peas or carrots. A small carton of milk. If you're lucky, the milk isn't expired. But the meatloaf, that's the real conversation. Some inmates joke that you could use it to fix a wobbling table because it never bends, never breaks, and never tastes like meat. Others cut it with a plastic fork and watch it spring back like a sponge. But the truth is more serious. Many inmates don't finish dinner. Not because they don't want to eat, but because the food makes them feel sick. The mashed potatoes are watery. The vegetables taste metallic from the can. And everything on the tray is the same color, brown, gray, or beige. The officers slide the tray through the slot, close it, and move on to the next cell. No talking. No choices. No questions. Just food, or something close to it. But the emotional part hits when inmates sit alone on their bunk and stare at the tray. Because dinner isn't just food. Dinner is the reminder that you can't sit at a table. You can't eat with other people. You can't walk to a kitchen. You can't even step outside your cell. You eat in silence. With the smell of metal and concrete around you. With a TV 2 cells down playing too loud. With the cold air blowing from the vent above your head. And when inmates finish eating, they push the tray back through the slot. Empty. Quiet. Done. Most nights, that tray is taken away and replaced with nothing until 5 a.m. the next morning. But dinner isn't the most shocking part of death row food. Because there's one more meal. A meal that only a few inmates will ever experience. And it comes with a question that chills everyone. What do you want for your last meal? The final meal, the only choice they ever get. When an inmate on San Quentin's death row reaches the end of all appeals. When the courts have spoken. When the date is set. Something happens that does not happen at any other time in their life inside this prison. For the first and last time, they get to choose their meal. This is called the last meal request. And even though movies make it look dramatic, in reality, it's controlled, limited, and surprisingly simple. In California, death row inmates can request almost anything within prison rules. No alcohol. No fast food deliveries. No restaurant takeout. No banned items. No food requiring outside travel. The meal must come from what the prison kitchen can prepare, or what's already available inside the facility. For a man who hasn't made a food choice in 20 years, even a small choice feels huge. Some inmates ask for comfort food they grew up with. Fried chicken. Macaroni and cheese. Ice cream. Burgers. A slice of pie. Others ask for something symbolic, like a single apple, or just a soda. And a few request nothing at all. The weight of the moment takes away their appetite. But here's the part most people never hear. The last meal is served more than 12 hours before the execution. There is no dramatic final bite. No, right before the event. No, movie moment. It usually arrives quietly in the same gray tray, through the same metal slot, just like every other day. The inmate sits on his bunk, holding the only meal he ever got to choose. Some eat slowly. Some barely touch it. Some stare at the food for a long time, thinking about everything that brought them here. There are no cameras. No speeches. No officials watching. Just a man. And silence. Sometimes, the final meal is simple, like a cheeseburger with fries and a soda. Sometimes it's emotional, like asking for a food their mother used to cook. And sometimes it's peaceful, like ice cream and nothing else. But every officer who has ever delivered a last meal says the same thing. This tray feels heavier than all the others. It's not the food. It's what it represents. The end of a long road. The last choice they will ever make. The final moment of normal human freedom. And the next morning, that same man who once dreaded cold oatmeal, mystery meat, and rubbery meatloaf will never receive another tray again. But before we get there, there's something the world rarely sees. How death row inmates survive between meals, and the secret food economy that exists behind bars. The secret snacks of death row. Most people think death row inmates only eat the 3 trays the prison gives them. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. But inside San Quentin's death row, there's another food system. A hidden one. A quiet one. A system that officers know exists, but can't completely stop. It's called the store, or in prison language, canteen. Even death row inmates, locked inside their cells almost 24 hours a day, can order certain items once or twice a month. These items become their real meals, the ones they actually look forward to. A typical death row canteen list includes ramen noodles, chips, food, instant coffee, peanut butter, summer sausage, cereal, rice packets, candy bars. It doesn't sound like much, but for someone who's been eating cold oatmeal and mystery meat for years, it's everything. Here's how the system works. Once a month, inmates fill out a slip with the items they want. They pay using money sent by family or earned from tiny prison jobs that pay pennies per hour. A week later, a large brown paper bag arrives at their cell, filled with whatever they ordered. This bag becomes their private kitchen. Some inmates turn ramen into creative meals, mixing crushed chips, sausage, and seasoning to make prison pizza or jailhouse stew. Others save coffee to stay awake during long, lonely nights. But the most important part? Canteen food is currency. On death row, where inmates can't leave their cells to trade in person, everything moves through the bars or through conversations. A pack of noodles might be traded for help writing a letter, information, or even small favors that only someone 2 cells down can provide. Food becomes a quiet economy, a way to survive mentally, not just physically. And officers know it. Some ignore it. Some shut it down. Some pretend not to see it unless it becomes a problem. But there's another side to this story. Canteen food can run out. Orders can get messed up. Delivery days can change without warning. When that happens, inmates are left with nothing but the trays. And when someone hasn't had ramen or snacks for weeks, the smell of watery potatoes and rubbery meatloaf hits even harder. But the most surprising part of death row's food system is something almost no one talks about. Some inmates cook real meals, using nothing but hot water, plastic, and creativity. And what they make inside those cells will shock you. The death row chefs, cooking with no kitchen. Inside San Quentin's death row, the cells are small, cold, and built from concrete. There are no stoves, no ovens, no pans, no knives, not even a microwave. But somehow, inmates still cook. Not restaurant-style cooking, not gourmet cooking, but prison cooking, the kind that uses whatever you have, no matter how limited. And the most shocking part? Some of these inmates become experts. They create meals using plastic bowl, hot water from the sink, a torn piece of cardboard, and pure creativity. This is how the death row chefs survive. 1. Ramen is the king of the cell. Every canteen bag has at least 2 or 3 packs of ramen. Ramen is cheap. Ramen cooks fast. Ramen can turn into anything. Inmates crush it, boil it, season it, and mix it with whatever extra food they have. They add beef summer sausage, peanut butter, chips for crunch, leftover vegetables from trays, salt packets saved all week. Ramen becomes burrito filling, prison spaghetti, or the famous soups and chips spread. Some inmates make a huge mixture and share it with the cell next door, one scoop passed through the bars at a time. 2. The boiling bag cooking method. Death row inmates can't boil water, but they can heat it. Here's how they do it. They take a plastic garbage bag, fill it with hot tap water, tie the top tight, then drop their food inside the bag to warm it. It's like a homemade steamer. Rice? Cooked. Sausage? Softened. Oatmeal? Thicker and better than the morning tray. Nothing fancy, but it works. 3. The prison burrito. This is the legendary recipe of death row, a meal almost every inmate knows how to make. They mix ramen, crushed chips, shredded summer sausage, seasoning packets, and a little water. Then they wrap the mixture in a tortilla, or if tortillas aren't available, they flatten it on cardboard and let it dry into a solid sheet. It becomes heavy, salty, calorie-packed, enough to keep someone full for the whole day. Inmates call it the brick for holiday food behind bars. Even on death row, there are moments where inmates cook something special. Thanksgiving, Christmas, 4th of July. Not because they're celebrating, but because food is the only thing that gives the day a different feeling. They save snacks, save soups, save candy, trade items, plan ahead. Some try to cook a meal that reminds them of home. Others just want something bigger than the normal tray. For a moment, even a small one, the food makes them forget where they are. The truth behind death row cooking. These meals aren't fancy. They aren't healthy. They aren't even legal sometimes. But they give inmates something the trays never provide. Control. A chance to choose. A chance to create. A chance to feel human, even in a place designed to take that away. And this cooking leads to a bigger question. What happens when food becomes the only comfort on death row? What does that do to a person's mind? That answer takes us deeper into the emotional world of men who eat alone, think alone, and live with silence every day. The emotional weight of every meal. Food on death row is not just something you eat. It becomes a message, a reminder, a symbol of everything an inmate has lost. Most people outside imagine prison as loud, violent, and chaotic, and sometimes it is. But on death row, it's the silence that changes you. Meals come 3 times a day, always the same way. A tray, a slot, a moment of eye contact with an officer, or none at all. Then silence again. And slowly, inmates start to attach emotions to every bite they take. 1. Breakfast feels like another day of waiting. When that cold oatmeal arrives at 5 a.m., inmates aren't thinking about taste. They're thinking, another day, and I'm still here. It's not just food, it's a reminder that nothing changes. The oatmeal, the bread, the dry eggs. Same thing today, same thing tomorrow. The routine becomes heavy on the mind. 2. Lunch is the most humbling part of the day. By lunchtime, the unit feels quiet and tired. That mystery meat, that overcooked rice, that dry cornbread, it sends a message. You don't control anything anymore. Some inmates take one look at the tray and lose their appetite. Others eat slowly, not because they want to, but because they know hunger hurts more. Lunch becomes a mental battle, not a physical one. 3. Dinner is the loneliest meal. Dinner hits harder on death row than anywhere else in the prison. Not because of the taste, not because of the food quality, but because it marks the end of the day. A whole night ahead. No more trays. No more movement. Just the sound of distant voices and the hum of the blower fan. When inmates scrape the last spoonful of mashed potatoes, they know. No more food for the next 12 hours. Some sit on their beds holding the empty tray, just thinking. Others lay back and stare at the ceiling. Some write letters. Some cry quietly where no one can see. Dinner is not just dinner. It's the moment that says, you made it through another day, but you're still waiting for the one day you won't. For Canteen food is emotional medicine. Those ramen soups, cookies, and instant coffees? They aren't just snacks. They are hope in a bag. Something different. Something chosen. Something that reminds an inmate he is still human. When a man hasn't had control over anything for years, choosing a flavor of chips becomes a small but powerful victory. 5. The last meal hits the heart most of all. When a man chooses his final meal, he's not choosing food. He's choosing a memory of family dinners, childhood, holidays, moments of happiness, a time before prison. And when he takes that bite, whether it's ice cream or fried chicken, the emotional weight is unlike anything else. Some officers say they have delivered thousands of meals in their career. But the final meal is the only one they never forget. Food on death row is not about taste. It's not about nutrition. It's not about choice. It's about survival. Physical, mental, and emotional. But we're not done. Because the next chapter goes deeper into the system behind all this. Who actually cooks death row food? What kitchen prepares it? And what rules decide what inmates get to eat? Behind the kitchen doors, who really cooks death row food? Most people imagine that death row meals are cooked by special chefs or a separate team. But the truth is far less dramatic and far more surprising. San Quentin's death row meals come from the exact same kitchen that feeds the rest of the prison. A huge industrial kitchen deep inside the facility, a place most inmates never see and most outsiders never hear about. Inside that kitchen, the cooks are inmates themselves. Not death row inmates. Not outsiders. Just regular prisoners serving time in general population. These men wake up around 2:30 a.m. Not for freedom. Not for recreation. But to cook thousands of meals before sunrise. And the system works like this. 1. The prison kitchen is a full operation. The kitchen looks like a factory. Giant metal pots the size of bathtubs. Ovens stacked from wall to wall. Trays sliding across long steel tables. Steam rising everywhere. And inmates wearing aprons, gloves, and hairnets. They make everything in huge batches, mixing food with wooden paddles as tall as a person. Oatmeal? Cooked 80 gallons at a time. Mashed potatoes? Made from industrial powdered mix. Beans? Boiled in pots big enough to stand inside. Nothing is cooked fresh to order. Everything is produced as cheaply and quickly as possible. 2. Inmates do the cooking. Most kitchen workers are not trained chefs. They're inmates chosen for the job because they behaved well, needed income, or wanted extra food. Their pay? Pennies. Literally a few cents an hour. But the real benefit is access to food scraps and leftovers, a luxury compared to death row trays. Still, even in the kitchen, there are strict rules. No knives unless supervised. No walking out with extra food. No sneaking ingredients. No flavor changes unless approved. The meals must be basic and the same every day. Because San Quentin isn't allowed to cook delicious meals. They're only required to cook meals that meet minimum nutrition standards. Not taste standards. Not comfort standards. Just survival standards. 3. The recipe book is government-controlled. Every meal that reaches death row comes from a state-issued recipe book called a standardized menu plan. This book tells the kitchen what to cook, how much to cook, what ingredients to use, how many calories to provide. This is why the oatmeal is the same every week. The meatloaf never changes. The beans always taste identical. The vegetables come from cans, not farms. It's not about creativity. It's about consistency and cost. For the death row meals are assembled separately. Even though the food is cooked in the main kitchen, the trays for death row are handled with strict security. Officers escort the food carts. Trays are sealed or covered. Everything is counted. Nothing is left behind. The reason is simple. On death row, safety rules are tighter than anywhere else in the prison. No loose utensils. No glass. No metal lids. No sharp items. Even the milk cartons must be soft cardboard. 5. The kitchen workers know the truth. Inmates who cook the food often talk about it. It's not great, but we're following the recipe. They tell us exactly what to put in it. We can't add seasoning even if we want to. Most say the same thing. We're feeding thousands for pennies. And that's why the meals taste the way they do. Not because anyone wants them to be bad, but because the system is built on tight budgets, strict rules, security risks, and mass production. And the people who pay the price for that? The men who eat behind locked cell doors. But there's one more part of the food story that is even more hidden, even more controlled, even more quiet. What happens when something goes wrong? When food is spoiled, cold, or contaminated? And what rights do death row inmates have when that happens? When the food goes wrong, complaints, spoilage, and the fight for basic rights. Most people never think about what happens when prison food goes bad. When something smells strange. When milk arrives sour. When meat looks gray instead of brown. Or when vegetables have a metallic taste so strong it makes your stomach hurt. But on San Quentin's death row, this happens more often than the public will ever know. And when it does, inmates face a painful truth. They can't walk to the kitchen. They can't ask for a replacement. They can't speak to a cook. They can't demand better. All they can do is complain through the bars. 1. Spoiled food happens more than anyone admits. Because the kitchen cooks food in massive batches, errors happen. Trays arrive cold. Milk is past its date. Vegetables taste fermented. Meat looks undercooked. Potatoes are watery from being rushed. Bread is moldy on rare occasions. But spoiled food isn't always the kitchen's fault. Sometimes trays sit too long before being delivered. Other times the carts aren't heated enough. And sometimes the food is fine in the morning, but the temperature drops, and it spoils by the time it reaches death row. Either way, inmates pay the price. Many throw away half the tray. Others try to eat it because hunger hurts more than taste. A few get sick, alone in their cell with no nurse in sight. 2. How inmates complain, and why it almost never works. When something is wrong, inmates can write a 602 grievance form, the official complaint document in California prisons. But here's the reality. It takes weeks to get a response. The tray is long gone by then. The officer who delivered it may not remember. The kitchen has already served hundreds more meals. And because death row is such a controlled environment, many complaints are dismissed as unproven, insufficient evidence. Food met minimum standards. It's not that officers don't care. Some do. Some apologize. Some offer to replace milk or fruit if they have extras. But the system is big, slow, paper-based, and not built for fixing fast problems. By the time an inmate fills out a form, breakfast, lunch, and dinner have already moved on. 3. What officers can and can't do. Officers delivering trays have limited power. They can swap a spoiled milk carton, report a bad batch, make notes for their supervisor. But they cannot change the menu, add extra food, go back to the kitchen, give more than what's on the tray, make special exceptions. Even if they want to help, regulations stop them. And on death row, every rule is enforced tighter than anywhere else. For when something is seriously wrong, if an entire batch of food is spoiled, undercooked chicken, rotten fruit, contaminated vegetables, molten bread, then the officers can send the whole cart back. This is rare, but it happens. When it does, inmates wait longer for food and sometimes receive emergency replacement meals. Peanut butter sandwiches, cereal, cold lunches, crackers and milk. Not great, but better than getting sick. 5. The hardest part, no control. The biggest struggle is not the taste or temperature. It's the feeling of, I can't do anything about this. If your meal at home is bad, you cook something else. If a restaurant gives you spoiled food, you complain and get a refund. But on death row, you have no kitchen, no choices, no refunds, no second options. Just a tray, a slot, a tiny plastic fork, and silence. 6. The hidden records, nutrition requirements. Even though the food is plain and sometimes unappetizing, it does follow strict nutrition rules. Minimum calories, 500 plus per day. required vitamins. A balance of protein, carbs, dairy, and vegetables. But meeting requirements doesn't mean the food is enjoyable, or fresh, or comforting, or satisfying. The goal is survival, not quality. 7. The question that no one outside thinks about. Spoiled food gets thrown away after a few bites. But then what? The inmate goes hungry until the next tray. No snacks. No vending machines. No fridge. No outside delivery. And on death row, hunger hits harder because there is nothing else to focus on. Time moves slower. Nights feel longer. Silence feels heavier. This brings us to something even deeper. What does the food situation say about the system itself? What does it reveal about how society treats the men in these cells? And what does it mean for the future of death row? What death row food reveals about the system itself? Food is one of the simplest things in life. You don't need to be rich, powerful, or important to deserve a decent meal. But on San Quentin's death row, food becomes a window into something bigger, something many people outside never think about. Because when you look closely at what death row inmates eat, you begin to understand how the system truly works behind those walls. This chapter isn't about a tray. It's about the meaning behind the tray. 1. The food reflects the future of the prison system. For decades, San Quentin has been stuck between two worlds. The old world of punishment, the new world of rehabilitation. Death row sits right in the middle of that struggle. Meals that are bland, repetitive, barely seasoned, made in giant batches, show exactly where the state puts its priority. Control and cost first, comfort and quality last. This is not by mistake. It's by design. 2. Budget talks louder than anything else. Every carton of milk, every scoop of potatoes, every piece of meatloaf costs money. California spends tens of millions each year feeding its inmates, and death row meals are designed to be affordable, predictable, easy to prepare, safe to transport, impossible to misuse. So the menu doesn't change much. The recipes stay the same. The ingredients stay basic. The message is clear. We feed you enough to survive, nothing more. 3. Security shapes everything. Because death row is the highest security unit, food rules are stricter than anywhere else in San Quentin. That means no Real metal forks, no bones in the chicken, no glass bottles, no fresh produce with pits or seeds, no containers that could be turned into weapons. Everything must be soft, safe, and controlled. Even mashed potatoes are chosen because they can't be shaped into anything dangerous. The food is not just about nutrition. It's about preventing risk. For the meal trays show how isolation feels. Eating alone in a cell for years does something to a person. No dinner table. No shared meal. No laughs. No smells from a kitchen. No passing plates around. Studies show that humans connect deeply through food. But death row removes that connection completely. There is no family-style eating. No conversations. No shared moments. Just you. A tray. A concrete wall. And a buzzing fluorescent light. Food becomes a reminder of the isolation. A symbol of the distance between the inmate and the world they once knew. 5. The last meal tradition tells a human truth. When a man chooses his final meal, it reminds the world of something easy to forget. Death row inmates are still human beings. Men who once had families, had holidays, had favorite meals, had childhood cravings, had birthdays and dinners. Food brings all those memories back. And whether someone agrees with the justice system or not, that moment forces a realization. No matter what a person did in life, the end of their road still looks painfully human. 6. The food reveals a system under pressure. Staff shortages, high inmate populations, budget cuts, old buildings, aging infrastructure. All of these pressures show up on the tray. Food is where the cracks start to appear first. Watery potatoes, cold meals, expired milk, repetitive menus, smaller portions. It's not that the system doesn't care. It's that the system struggles to do better. And death row, being the most restricted unit, feels those struggles more than anyone. 7. the silent message behind every tray. Whether it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner, whether it's cold or warm, whether the inmate is here for 1 year or 40, each meal sends the same message. You are not forgotten, but you are not free. It is the ultimate middle ground. Not cruel, not luxurious, simply functional. Survival food. Institution food. Food meant to keep the body alive, not comfort the soul. 8. The question every viewer must face. When you see this system, the routines, the cooking rules, the last meals, you're left with one powerful question. What should the purpose of death row food be? Should it punish? Should it sustain? Should it offer dignity? Should it remain exactly the same? People across the United States, UK, and Canada have argued about this for years. Some say death row inmates should get only the basics. Others say food should never be used as punishment. Many believe the quality of food shows the character of a society. And that debate continues. But here inside San Quentin's death row, the trays keep coming. The routine never changes. And the food tells the story of a system older than most of the men who live inside it. The tray that tells the truth. The camera slowly moves down the quiet, echoing hallway of San Quentin's death row. Cell doors stand in perfect rows, steel, cold, unchanging. It looks the same today as it did yesterday, as it did 10 years ago, as it will tomorrow. Because in this place, routine isn't just routine. It's survival. 3 trays a day. 3 reminders. 3 messages delivered through a metal slot. Breakfast says, another day is beginning whether you're ready or not. Lunch says, you don't control anything here, not even your own appetite. Dinner says, this is where the choices end. But food on death row is more than calories or nutrients. It's the bridge between the life a man once lived and the life he now survives. It tells a story of control, isolation, discipline, and the cold efficiency of a system designed to function, not to comfort. Still, inside these concrete walls, we see something unexpected. Humanity. In the way inmates trade ramen like currency. In the way they cook meals with creativity even without a kitchen. In the way a single candy bar can feel like a piece of freedom. In the way the final meal becomes a memory. The last connection to a world they'll never touch again. And whether someone watching believes in punishment, justice, rehabilitation, or change, this truth remains. Food is the one thing every human being shares, even on death row. It tells us who we are, what we value, how we treat the powerless, and what we expect from the system that carries out our laws. Because behind every tray that slides through a slot is a question the prison walls can't hide. What does it mean to be human, even in a place built for the end of the road? The camera pulls back as the hallway fades into darkness. A final tray sits alone on a metal cart, untouched, waiting for the next routine to begin. A symbol of a world most people will never see. And a reminder of the quiet, complicated reality inside America's most feared unit.